Hello, everyone. I have a little question. Am I the only one who notices the sheer amount of inconsistencies and plot convenience in Star Wars? It's starting even from the first movie. Now, don't get me wrong, Star Wars itself is an amazing universe, of course, and it's my favorite one to talk about. Yet, I have many, many reservations on how it is employed. I suppose we should start off with how inconsistent canon is. Now, don't get me wrong, the expanding universe, now called Legends, has some plot moments and inconsistencies, but it is relatively tame in comparison. Let's start off with the main plot line. Vader, or Anakin, we'll say. We'll start off with Anakin's plot line. From being a being that was created from the Force itself, he is a relatively tame character, especially regarding power feats, and is consistently beaten by many different people. Even though at 6 years old he had a midichlorian count of over 20,000. And when he was brought before the Jedi Council by Qui-Gon Jinn, he was still refused because he was too old, which is a little suspicious to say the least. But of course, besides that point, by episode 3, Anakin had a higher midichlorian count than even Palpatine, which is absolutely insane. This is the same person who is speculated to have 22 to 27,000 midichlorians, and widely regarded as the most powerful Sith Lord ever. Even at his older age and prime, still had less midichlorians than Anakin as a young man. Yet for some very odd reason, lost to his master on Mustafar. His same master who was completely destroyed by Count Dooku in less than 3 seconds, whilst Anakin defeated him quite easily. Now, why do you think that is? Because Anakin had a significantly higher midichlorian count and was much more skilled than Count Dooku. But you think with deductive reasoning that this would transfer over to Mustafar. But nope, you would be wrong. Now, I believe this was obviously for cinematic and, we'll say, dramatic effect. Because if this was a more, realistic scenario, Anakin would have just utilized his vastly superior force powers to turn Obi-Wan inside out, or just turn him into atoms, essentially. Or, snap his neck or force choke him. There's a lot of options Anakin had at his disposal. But of course, some would say, oh, well, Obi-Wan knew Anakin very well, and he took advantage of his anger. And when you're angry, you don't think correctly. Now, that's a flawed analogy, because I could say the same about my father. I know my father very well. And let's say he was more angry at me, and I was, let's say, a little more calm like Obi-Wan. It really wouldn't change the fact that my father would beat the absolute shit out of me in a fight. And this is no different. Like I said, this applies because if Count Dooku, one of the best, if not the best duelist in the Star Wars universe besides Palpatine, was defeated quite easily by Anakin in a lightsaber duel, I can imagine that Obi-Wan would stand little to no chance against Anakin, even in his younger years in Episode 3. Now, I'm going to disregard Palpatine outsmarting the Jedi Order because he did legitimately turn himself off from the Force, and is listed as one of the most intelligent beings in the Star Wars universe. So at least his story was actually very plausible. One of my biggest critiques with Star Wars is the plot armor, and the specific author-driven hatred towards the Galactic Empire itself. And they have so many points in the shows, the movies, where they depict the Empire as evil, weak, and efficient, especially in canon. This is extremely relevant in canon. It's almost like they can't decide whether to make the Empire a very scary fighting force or incompetent morons. There's no in-between. Now, of course, I'm on the extreme when it comes to the Empire. They're highly efficient and make a lot of sense, actually, when you look into the lore regarding their command structure and how everything works, essentially, but including their training, especially in Legends. But now back to canon. Yeah, canon cannot decide whether or not stormtroopers are conscripts or bumbling buffoons. That's all they say. They're just conscripts or bumbling buffoons in every single adaptation. The only time they were portrayed as semi-competent was in the original film, Episode 4, A New Hope, and in a few iterations in the Andor show. Saying that very sparingly because in that same show, random citizens were able to take out stormtroopers with their bare hands. So, yeah, definitely no plot convenience or author bias there at all, I promise. Now, of course, I'm going to ignore any mainstream political agenda, and I'm not trying to be political on this channel anyways, so I'm not going to really elaborate on why they portray the Empire in a certain way. But if you know, I think you understand what I'm talking about. And for some reason, regardless of whatever advantage the Galactic Empire has in any show or movie or any type of adaptation, the rebels seem to always win against literal impossible odds. It makes no sense to me. How a galaxy-spanning empire, a galactic-wide empire with relatively infinite resources and logistical capabilities, somehow loses to a ill-equipped insurgent faction with less than a few planets protecting it or supporting it, while the Empire has nearly 4 billion planets and 10,000 plus star systems just in its short span of 20 years of existing. And of course, I'm aware it's just because of a message to say like good triumphs evil or any other message such as that, which is relatively deceptive because it depends on your viewpoint or perception. And no, that's not a good message to begin with anyways, good versus evil. The superior fighting force is what wins. It's not good or evil, it's the superior fighting force. So if we're being realistic here. Let's also break down canon itself. Canon cannot be consistent to save its life. Let's look on like main sources like let's say Wikipedia. Have you noticed when you look on like different types of ships, particularly Imperial ships or training for stormtroopers or any other type of Imperial troops, it is so inconsistent. It doesn't tell you its hull range, doesn't say its cargo capacity or number of weapons or crew, very bare minimum results you'll get from canon on Wikipedia. Yet, when you go to Legends, it will explain in very great detail of what each Imperial ship is capable of or what their soldiers are. And it'll show a lot more diversity and variety of soldiers as well, in contrast to canon. Yet somehow, canon always gets the bigger budget and is supported by most major film productions or film companies. I've even heard rumors of Legends or the expanded universe, or both, being dissolved completely, apparently, or wanting to be dissolved. Yet there's so many things you could learn from Legends over canon anyways. And considerably more lore as well, much more entertaining from what I've noticed in my research. And I think one of the biggest story flops that Star Wars as a company, or Star Wars as of itself, has completely neglected is the Galactic Empire itself. There are so many things they could, or shows, or movies or game iterations they could do solely based on what the Empire was doing. We were talking about possibly the largest fictional military in fiction, or the largest fictional military in fiction itself, had it reached its full potential and not lost to the Rebel Alliance, Plot Armor Alliance, we could have numerous stories of different Imperial squadrons or, detachments or such, exploring, dozens, if not hundreds of new planets, ecosystems, and navigating the challenges of whatever said planet or area that they're on. Perhaps have a new faction similar to the Yuzan Vong and the galaxy preparing war with them, as that's what the Galactic Empire was originally created for. That's what Palpatine envisioned. But now we get bombarded with generic Rebel Alliance slop or something involving clones or Mandalorians, further disillusioning the average Star Wars viewer to portray anything that's Imperial as completely moronic and incompetent. Even though both fictional and real-world evidence will suggest that highly trained volunteer troops are the best option for a military, especially a very large galaxy-spanning military such as the Galactic Empire. But yeah, overall, it truly is disheartening to see because there are so many different types of Imperial Trooper variants that we could elaborate on in shows or games or more movie adaptations, kind of like The Force Unleashed. That was like the closest we got to more lore-based speculation in games specifically about the Galactic Empire. And it was still good. Of course, it had a major Rebel Alliance bias, of course, but it was still a very cool game and very cool to learn about the different types of troopers. My only complaint is they still went with the trope, even though it was Legends, by the way, that stormtroopers were incompetent, weak-minded fools that were only good in numbers, even though Legends accounts and their training proves the complete opposite. They are elite shock troops, not weak-minded conscript buffoons. Now, of course, I'd like to focus a little more attention now to Legends because there are some inconsistencies in Legends as well. And I'll discuss both the positives and the negatives of Legends, but we'll start with the negatives first. Involving the Dark Trooper program, the one made by Ron Mock, it's really funny to me that somebody with a lightsaber is able to kill the soldiers specifically designed to kill Force users and have lightsaber immune armor. Yes, I say immune because Frick was able to withstand a full power Death Star blast. So if Frick armor can withstand a full power Death Star blast, a lightsaber is not going to damage it. Anyways, yeah, Luke defeats them, of course, because apparently he has, 500,000 midichlorians and is being protected by George Lucas himself, but I digress. It's not like even the man himself, George Lucas, stated that that Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker have half the potential of their father, which would put them in the 16,000 midichlorian range. But anyways, on to the positives of Legends. And one of the things I liked that they did was clones. They finally portrayed clones in a more realistic tone and adaptation. Particularly the Sparty clones. There was a short period of time when the Galactic Empire first formed, they used Sparty clones as a temporary holding until they got volunteered troops. They were widely criticized for being unstable, inaccurate, and shooting each other at times, which perfectly encompasses how unstable clones can be. And not just that, the training was significantly superior as well. I actually have a video encompassing Stormtrooper training on Legends. You're welcome to check that video as well, because I'm not going to elaborate any more on the Stormtroopers versus clones debate, but you watch my video and I think it'll at least change your perspective. Anyways, disregarding that. The Empire had so many different concepts in Legends, like world devastators, the Sun Crusher as well, axial super lasers on Super Star Destroyer dreadnoughts with quantum crystalline armor. So many different things they could have gone with. Yeah, it's honestly insane how powerful the Legends Galactic Empire is in comparison to their canon counterparts. Now, before I continue, anyone who's still watching this, thank you for, listening to my rant as of current. Of course, I'm going to be ranting a little more after this, but I wanted to say thank you all for watching so far. And if you really enjoy, what you're watching, I'd really appreciate, subscribing or, maybe liking the video, sharing it with somebody you know, or somebody you'd like to change their mind, or perhaps you just want to enlighten them as well. It would be, it's really great to find like-minded individuals. I'm sure anyone can agree on that subject matter. Anyways, back to the video. Now, I'd say one more negative thing regarding Legends, and that was Galen Merrick's character itself, not really making sense in place of the lore, and also trying to make him just ridiculously overpowered for absolutely no reason. If he had no plot armor involved, or they didn't, all of a sudden give him 50,000 midichlorians or, something of that type, yeah, he would have died the first or second mission. But anyways, back to canon. They seem to always portray most Imperial soldiers as mindless drones for some reason, and they're incompetent most of the time. I mean, it's not like they're recruited from all across the galaxy. It's not like they volunteered themselves and have families at home or anything like that. It's not like they form, friendships or anything or camaraderie, because it's not like that's something all soldiers do or anything, right? Yeah, I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. It is just absolutely ridiculous. So I've been giving it a little thought, and it's been a little thought. I mean, I've been thinking about it for years. And I believe I'm finally going to act on what I believe, or what I want Star Wars to be. I'm going to make my own show, I believe. Of course, I'm going to do my own trademarks. I'm not going to, officially say Star Wars. It's just going to be my own headcanon. And I believe I'm going to start with Source Filmmaker for the animation. And if anybody who knows more about that or would like to participate in said movie or show production, I would reach out to me. That would actually be very kind of you. And I also would greatly appreciate it. Or if you just want to talk about the Galactic Empire and you're interested in it, such as myself, that would be great as well. It's always good to find like-minded individuals. That's what I say. It's a dying trend these days, so it would be greatly appreciated. But, anyways, regarding my show, I think it's going to encompass Legends more so specifically. Like I said, it's going to show, maybe we'll start in detail with stormtrooper training and how brutal it was. We'll deal with like battles, we'll say, of different varying scales, all over the galaxy, and perhaps even multiversal threats, because the Galactic Empire has, dabbled in interdimensional technology before, and it has been confirmed that different dimensions do exist in Legends and its continuum. Apologies, I mean a continuum. But, yes, perhaps I can envision large fleet battles, right? Or, Imperial fleets traveling through the star systems or something else of that matter. I think the final thing I'm going to say is, regarding the film industry in general when it comes to Star Wars, is it has just been ruined ever since George Lucas sold it. That has got to be the worst thing that ever happened to Star Wars, was it getting sold over to Disney. I remember playing so many different types of games that were from multiple source material that people made, or let's say more fan adaptations or other things such as that. And Disney just stole all the trademarks, and all those games went off the App Store or off of, Google Play, we'll say, as well. That's why I say, unfortunately, there's little to no hope for Star Wars in the future, even if we have Dave Filoni as well, because he doesn't portray the Empire in a very positive manner as well. So, like I said, I'm going to abide by my own, I'll say, ambition, I suppose. And I'm just going to try and work on my own headcanon. And the difference between me and them is I'm going to produce it with actual passion and regard for the lore and realism as well. Because, no offense, even if it's a fictional universe, you can still add realism, because I can promise you there are plenty of unrealistic happenings in Star Wars, and it is littered with them. Now, of course, I love Star Wars. I just believe it's not in the right hands currently, and honestly, I don't think it ever has been, or at least it hasn't been fully ever, and I think I'm going to act upon what I believe would make Star Wars more entertaining, at least for people that think or, let's say act like me. And of course, other people that are like-minded, if they're interested in it as well. So yeah, this is, relatively concludes, I'd say, my rant. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you hope to see more content like this in the future, please let me know in the comments, and I will gladly oblige. All right? So, see you, everyone, and long live the Empire.